The basement door opened by itself that night. I was alone in my grandma's house, and the sound of the rusty hinges echoed down the dark hallway like a cobra invitation. I knew there was no turning back anymore. Something down there wanted me to go downstairs. Hi, this is the Sloom Room channel. Today, I brought a story I found on the internet, coming straight from Russia, told by a guy named Dmitry in 2023. This account gave me full-body chills, and I'm sure you're going to want to listen all the way to the end. Drop a like, and let's get into it. It all started when my parents decided it would be a good idea for me to spend the summer at my grandmother's house. I was about 15 years old, and honestly, I wasn't even a little bit excited. Her village was in the Russian countryside, one of those places where time seems to have stopped in the 1950s. No decent internet, no friends, nothing to do. But my mom insisted it would be good for me to get to know my roots, to spend time with my grandma before it was too late. The house was old, built from dark wood that creaked in the wind. It sat on the edge of the village, almost isolated, with a dense forest out back. My grandmother had lived there alone since my grandfather died about 10 years earlier. She was that kind of traditional Russian granny, headscarf, always cooking, very religious. She had Orthodox icons in every room. Right on the first night, I realized something was wrong. I was trying to sleep when I heard voices. At first, I thought it was the TV in the living room, but then I remembered my grandmother had already gone to bed. I kept listening. They were low murmurs, like several people were talking in another room. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was strange, kind of urgent, kind of mournful. I got up and went to check. I walked down the hallway with my heart racing. The voices seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the kitchen, from the basement, from outside. When I got to the living room, everything was silent, completely quiet. I went back to my room thinking I had imagined it, but as soon as I closed my eyes, the murmurs started again. That became routine. Every night, those voices. I talked to my grandmother at breakfast the next morning, trying to sound casual. She stayed quiet for a while, stirring her tea slowly. Then she said, "Don't mind them. They're just the former residents. They're always here." The way she said it, so natural, like it was the most normal thing in the world, made me even more uncomfortable. As the days went by, other things started to happen. I'd leave objects in one place, and they'd show up in another. My phone, which I was sure I'd left on the nightstand, would turn up in the kitchen. Clothes I didn't remember taking out of the closet were folded on the chair. And always, those murmurs at night, each time louder, more insistent. One afternoon, while exploring the house, I found old photographs in the attic. They were from the time of the Second World War. My grandmother told me, in a tired voice, that the village had been occupied by German soldiers. A lot of people died. Her house had been used as a command post. People were interrogated in the basement. Some never came out of there. That information kept pounding in my head. At night, the murmurs seemed clearer. They were pleas, muffled cries. I could make out words in German mixed with Russian. It started to get hard to sleep. I'd turn on the light and just stare at the ceiling, listening to those voices of people who weren't there anymore. One night, around 3 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy, methodical, military boots. My room suddenly got freezing cold. even though it was summer. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, praying for it to pass quickly. The footsteps stopped at my door. I froze, staring at the doorknob. It started to turn slowly. The door opened a few inches. There was no one on the other side, just darkness and that unbearable cold. I screamed for my grandmother. She appeared with a candle in her hand, came into the room, and made the sign of the cross several times, murmuring prayers. Whatever was there backed off. The door closed by itself. My grandmother sat on my bed and said that house held a lot of pain, a lot of bad history, but it was her house, and she wasn't going to leave because of ghosts. I seriously thought about calling my parents and begging them to come pick me up, but something kept me there. Maybe pride, maybe morbid curiosity. I stayed. The phenomena got worse. I woke up one night and all the drawers in the dresser were open. Another time, I found handprints, dirty with soil, on the bathroom mirror. And those murmurs, always those murmurs. The worst happened 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave. I was alone. My grandmother had gone to visit a neighbor. It was late afternoon, still light out. I was in the kitchen making a sandwich when I heard a dull thud coming from the basement, like something heavy had fallen. I stared at the basement door. No one had gone down there in years. My grandmother kept it locked. But at that moment, the door was slightly open. I didn't remember it being like that before. I went over and pushed it slowly. The wooden staircase went down into total darkness. The smell rising up was of wet earth and mold. I grabbed a flashlight and started going down, each step creaking under my weight. Down there, it was bigger than I'd imagined, and several small rooms, damp stone walls. On the packed dirt floor, I saw dark stains that could have been anything. The flashlight was flickering. The murmurs became deafening. Dozens of voices at the same time, screaming, begging, crying. I felt invisible hands touching me, pulling me. The air got so thick I could barely breathe. I saw shadows moving on the walls, faceless humanoid figures. One of them came closer, and I swear I felt a cold breath on my neck. I ran up the stairs like I'd never run in my life, slammed the basement door, and dragged a chair in front of it to block it. I stayed there, out of breath, until my grandmother came back. I told her everything. This time she didn't react calmly. She went pale, made the sign of the cross, and said I should never, ever have gone down there. That basement held the worst moments of that house, the darkest memories. It was better to leave it alone. I completely agreed. The last days in the village were tense. The phenomena continued, but I never went down to the basement again. When my parents finally came to pick me up, I hugged my grandmother with a mix of relief and guilt for leaving her alone with that. She just gave a sad little smile and said she was used to it, that those spirits were as much a part of the house as she was. I went back to the city, to the comfort of modern civilization. But even today, when it's really quiet at night, I still hear those murmurs, and I wonder what really happened in that basement during the war. If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel and share this story with someone. See you next time.